Ballard pointed to the short dog in the other man's hand. "Where you guys buy your bottles?" The man pointed with the bottle down towards Santa Monica Boulevard. "Mostly over there at Mako's." Ballard knew the place, an all-night market that primarily sold booze, smoke, rolling papers, pipes, and condoms. Ballard had responded to numerous calls there over her years on The Late Show. It was a place that drew rip-off artists and assaults like a magnet. Consequently, there were cameras inside and outside the business. "You think that's where Eddie got his fiver?" she asked. "Yup," said the kid. "Had to be," said Short Dog. "Ain't no other place around here open late." "You heard about Eddie having trouble with anybody?" she asked. "Nah, everybody liked Eddie," Short Dog said. "A gentle soul," Raspy added. Ballard waited. Nobody volunteered anything about Eddie having trouble. "Okay, guys, thanks," Ballard said. "Be safe." "Yup," said the kid. "Don't want to end up like Eddie." "Hey, Miss Detective," said Beret. "Why are you asking all these questions? Nobody gave a shit about Eddie before." "Well, they do now. Good night, guys." Ballard got back in her car and drove down to Santa Monica Boulevard. She turned right and went down 3 blocks to a rundown strip shopping plaza where Mako's Market was located. The market anchored one end of the plaza, and a 24-hour donut shop held down the other end. In between, there were 2 empty businesses, a Subway franchise, and a storefront business that offered one-stop shopping for notary needs, photocopying, and losing weight or quitting cigarettes through hypnosis. The area patrol car was parked in front of the donut shop, confirming the cliche. Ballard got out of her car and waved her hands, palm down, signaling smooth sailing. Behind the wheel of the patrol car, she could see Rollins, one of the officers who had responded to the fatal fire the other night. He flashed his lights in acknowledgement. Ballard assumed his partner was inside the donut shop. Mako's was a fortress. The front door had an electronic lock that had to be opened from inside. Once buzzed in, she saw the business was built like a bank in a high-crime neighborhood. The front door led to an anteroom that was 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep. There was nothing in this space except an ATM machine against the wall to the left. Front and center was a stainless steel counter with a large pass-through drawer and a wall of bulletproof glass rising above it. A steel door with triple locks was to the right of the counter. A man sat on a stool on the other side of the glass. He nodded at Ballard in recognition. "How's it going, Marco?" she said. The man leaned forward, pushed a button, and spoke into a microphone. "All is okay, officer," he said. Ballard had heard a story about Marco Linkoff having ordered the sign out front many years ago and then accepting the misspelled sign that arrived at half price. She didn't know if that was true.
Welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast. Good Reading Magazine is a monthly publication dedicated to books and reading and aims to help readers discover their next favourite book. You can find out more about the books discussed on today's podcast at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.
Hello and welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast. My name's Greg Dobbs. Today I'm talking to Michael Connelly about his new book, The Night Fire. Michael, welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
The Night Fire is set in LA, and you paint a pretty grim picture of LA, but you still seem to have a great affection for it. How do you reconcile those two feelings?
I know it's hard to do, I guess, when you read the books and say, how can this guy love that city? But, I write about detectives who kind of, by virtue of their trade, see the underside of the city and the negative sides. I don't think in my books I dwell enough on the things that I love about the city, and that's probably failing on my part. But, I'm, like many people there, have an affection for the city, good and bad. But also, there's a duty, I think, if you're going to write about even fiction, if you're going to write fiction about Los Angeles, to try to get it right and to try to reflect a little bit on what's going on. And this book, has some of the grim sides, as you say, but I think it's what I'm showing in the book is accurate to the place. It may be, getting back to your original question, it's not balanced out enough with the blue sky, but believe me, it's there.
Of course, there's a long tradition of LA or American crime fiction, but specifically LA crime fiction. I guess going back to Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, I guess more recently people like Elmore Leonard, James Ellroy, Jim Thompson. Do you feel part of that tradition? And if so, what do you draw from that tradition?
Well, I do feel part of it. I mean, we're all kind of at different times and so forth, trying to capture the essence of the city. And, going back to your first question, there's good and bad in the city, but it seems to draw people. It's a place of second chances. I'm one of these people. I was trying to write books for 10 years in another place, and it didn't happen. So I moved, to Los Angeles to try it one more time, and I got lucky, and it happened. And that seems to be the kind of thing that happens with many of the inhabitants of Los Angeles. They come there, for a second chance. And, my second chance, I was drawn there because of the writings of people like Raymond Chandler and Ross MacDonald and even James Ellroy in a more contemporary way. And so, I kind of feel part of that tradition. And as you kind of alluded to, it's probably the city in the United States that has been written about the most in terms of crime fiction and mystery and so forth. And so the stakes are high. First of all, you're looking for a path that somebody hasn't trod before in this city. So you're trying to be unique and so forth, but you're trying to be unique at the same time you're trying to fit into that pantheon, and hopefully, if you're lucky, get compared to some of those great writers and be seen as someone that is following that tradition.
Does the fact that it's in Hollywood or Hollywood is there make that task all that more difficult?
There's a difficulty in, as I said before, people have written about it for a long time. 100 years people have been writing about Hollywood and the foibles of Hollywood and the dreams that die in Hollywood. So it's a very familiar thing. But at the same time, I found almost unexpectedly as a writer that people are interested in LA and Hollywood because I think it's seen as the kind of harbinger of social change. If something's going to sweep around the world, it might have its origin in Los Angeles and in the entertainment industry and what that projects around the world. So there's a built-in good part of that, and that is, I didn't realize this till I was writing books about LA, but people in Australia want to read about LA for some reason. People in Paris want to read about LA. And I think if I had been writing about Pittsburgh or something, that would not have happened. So it gave me like a foot up on other writers, I felt. And whether that's fair or not, you can debate. But it kind of put me on the map faster than other people because I was writing about Hollywood. And so the second part of that is, okay, you're going to get that advantage if you're going to write about Hollywood, but you better get it right, or you better get a unique voice in there that will make you, once you get people to check you out, that they'll stay with you.
It's impossible to talk about LA crime fiction without mentioning the word noir, and it's a sort of a common thread right through this tradition. Is that something that you think about, the atmosphere of LA, or does that come naturally to you, or is it something you have to really think about?
Well, I would dare say it comes naturally, but what comes natural to me comes from me reading all over the place and being a voracious reader, which put me on the path to, doing what I do. So if it comes naturally, it's because it's schooled in me from the earliest stages of my life of being a lover of crime fiction. It's not something when I sit down to write a book that I'm thinking those terms. In fact, I hope your next question is not what is noir, because I can't answer that. I don't know exactly what it is. My kind of definition is that people are the architects of their own demise or their own failures. And I don't know if that kind of applies to most of the plots that I write. But I think there is an atmosphere in my books. I try to have an atmosphere of that anything can happen, and I think that more comes from the city as opposed to, a literary construct. I mean, I think it's a city where you look over your shoulder, and because anything can happen at any time. It's a random place, and I think that starts, bleeding into the ideas of noir. And so to me, it comes out of trying to be accurate about the city, and it kind of comes across maybe that way.
Your noir, if I can say, it is kind of like a full color noir, maybe slightly bleached.
I like the saying it's slightly bleached out. Yeah. When I moved there, I didn't even move to LA till I was 30 years old, to work for the newspaper. And this has become a cliche, but an editor told me on my first day, it's a sunny place for shady people. And, that's why we sell a lot of newspapers. And, it's true. It's a true description of the place.
Seems to elicit a lot of aphorisms like that, I guess. LA.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember back when I got into my Chandler, deep dive into Chandler when I was in college, and I went and bought all the paperback books. The books all had a blurb on the cover. I still have those books actually on the shelf. And it was a blurb from Ross McDonald, and I can't even remember it all off the top of my head, but it basically said that Raymond Chandler invested the sun-blinded streets of Los Angeles with a romantic presence that has never been seen before or since. And that's a great blurb. It's always stayed with me, and especially the part about the sun-blinded streets.
A lot of what this crime fiction is about is sort of exposing this, or going behind this facade of sunshine and palm trees into this seedy underbelly, which I guess it's famous for.
Yeah, I mean, and it's famous because people like that, to read about that, like peeling back the layers. Here's the reality presented through, mostly through Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And here's like the darkness, the dark heart that beats underneath it. That's really kind of a intoxicating theme, I think, to a reader. I know that's what drew me into so many of the books I've read over the years.
I think a lot of Australians might wonder whether all of what we've spoken about would be possible without American gun culture.
I think it's a good point. Can you have the kind of crime novels that I write, others write, without the easy access to guns? Probably not. A good writer is going to find a good story. You don't necessarily have a gun in it, but as I said earlier, it's a place where you got to look over your shoulder. It's a place where there's a random feel to what happens, especially in the nighttime of Los Angeles, and a lot of that is bred from the gun culture. I don't know what that exactly means, gun culture, but I mean the easy access to guns. Desperate people can get guns very easily in Los Angeles and my country, and that's a big part of what feeds into crime fiction.
Your characters seem to come to life mostly through dialogue rather than prose. Is it a conscious effort on your part to tell the story through dialogue?
I think so. I think it's kind of a holdover from my life as a journalist. And I was a crime reporter. And in newspapers back in the day, I haven't been a reporter in 25 years, so it was a different media world at that time. But essentially, crime news was always given second shift. It wasn't the important stuff of the day. So they were never giving you enough room to tell your story. And so you needed dialogue, you needed quotes in a story, but you just couldn't waste the space on quotes that didn't mean anything, that didn't carry the story or didn't carry information. And so as a reporter, you get a trained ear for that, a piece of dialogue that moves a story a step forward. And I think I just carry that over into what I do. So I spend a lot of time on dialogue. I want every piece of dialogue to move the story forward. And if you're successful in doing that, you don't need a whole lot of description and so forth. That can suffice. I think that's been accentuated for me in the last few years because I've been working on a TV show adaptation of my Bosch books that and scripting and the visual arts are very much more reliant on dialogue than a novel. And so again, it's like a reinforcement that dialogue is king, and we have to pay a lot of attention to it.
Was it an easy transition from writing novels to writing screenplays?
No, not at all, because you lose 1/3 of the game. In a book you have obviously what people say, what they do, but you're inside, like Harry Bosch, you're inside his head. You're knowing what he's thinking, and you lose all that interior stuff when you go to a script, and it's only about what he says and what he does. And so you have to really dig hard and learn and be creative in terms of revealing interior thought and character through dialogue.
The character of Bosch, Harry Bosch, was first introduced in 1992 through The Black Echo, and that character developed over, I think, another 21 books. And Ballard's been around for 3 books, the first, The Late Show, Dark Sacred Night, and now The Night Fire. Do you intend to keep developing her in the same way that you've developed Harry Bosch?
Yeah, I mean, what I've done is over and over again, when I introduce a character, and this would go all the way back to my first book with Bosch, when I'm writing that book, I don't know if there'll be another one with that character. It's a decision I make after I have a book in hand, and I ask myself, is there more to say? Can this character carry another story or several stories? And it's always a decision I make after I have something done. But I usually in the first books of a character, I plan stuff that I can then come back to if there's going to be more stuff down the line. So the things that stand out for me are like the Bosch. In the very first book, you find out his mother was murdered and it's never been solved. So there's a book there. If I get the chance to do it or if I want to do it. Lincoln Lawyer, I planted stuff about his past, connecting it with Bosch and so forth. In a very oblique way, but I knew I could do a whole book that would go down that path if I wanted to. Ballard has a backstory of growing up almost homeless in Hawaii, and maybe I just wanted to get a vacation or something, but that's something I can explore down the line. So I plan all this stuff, then I write the book, and then I look at the character and think about the character, and it's really one question: is there anything more to say? And sometimes there hasn't been. I've abandoned characters after 1 or 2 books in the past, but Bosch has obviously gone the distance. The Lincoln Lawyer has hung around, and now Ballard has really got my fascination. I really enjoy writing about her. This is coupled with the fact that she's a single source inspiration. There's a real detective she's based on, and I have that person to help me to guide me as I'm writing stories. So that's like a great thing to have, and that pretty much means that she's going to be around for a while as well.
A lot of your characters also seem to develop in partnership with other characters. There's Bosch and Ballard in this book, but Bosch also has a relationship with Mickey Haller, who first appeared in 9 Dragons. That's his half-brother. Bosch and John Jack Thompson, who is mentioned in The Night Fire. Bosch and his daughter Maddie. Bosch and Lucia Soto from The Burning Room. Is that something that you consciously move through, that character development through partnerships?
I guess so. I mean, Bosch is the center of the wheel, and there's a lot of spokes, and all these people you're talking about, big or small, to me are spokes in Bosch's universe. And I love crossing paths with different characters. That's one aspect. I write like I read. I love that in books that I read when you kind of get a payoff for sticking with an author, and you go, oh, I remember that character from that other book. It's a good, fulfilling moment as a reader, and it's a good, fulfilling moment as a writer. So that's one reason why I do it. The other thing is I'm kind of considered pretty prolific. I do at least 1 book a year, sometimes 2. But even still, I have this cast of characters, and if I don't fold them into a Bosch book, it could mean I don't write about them for 3 years, and I don't like doing that. I like knowing what these characters are up to. The books move in real time. They're set in the year they're published, and I don't like the idea of going like 3 years without knowing what Mickey Haller's up to. So I fold him into a book, and you at least get a little sense of what he's up to.
Is there some kind of massive spreadsheet in your head?
I'm glad you said in your head. Yeah. There is in my head, but I don't have any. I guess it would have been arrogant to start keeping tabs on all this stuff, because then that would be me saying I know I'm going to be able to write all these books, and that's not the case at all. You never know when it won't happen anymore. So I never took the time to write anything down, which I did, but I don't. And so it's pretty much in my head.
A lot of the Night Fire deals with technology, and you always seem to keep up with technology. There's the usual DNA and ballistics things. The mobile phones and CCTV obviously play a big part, but there's another sequence in the Night Fire where Ballard is showing Bosch how to use phone tapping software. Is that something you know about already, or do you research that, or how do you get that information?
Well, I mean, it's research, and then also I did a podcast last year on a true crime, and in that true crime, or in that true investigation, they did wiretaps, and I found it fascinating how they did it and what they got from it and so forth. So, it's like water seeks its own level. I'm doing this podcast. I'm fascinated by all this wiretap stuff, so it ends up in a book I'm writing as well. And so, I want my stuff to be accurate. I put an author's note in this book about where I took shortcuts in getting the approval for wiretaps and so forth. But, the different legal steps can be really boring. That's not what is important. I think what it is about what's going on in an investigation, where you reach a point where your only hope is really to do a wiretap and then to stir things up so people get on the phone talking about a case. I just loved all that when I heard it from real detectives in my podcast, and so of course that's going to end up in the book.
Right through the book, other books too, but this book in particular, there's this very cool and unceasing momentum that goes right through the book. Do you yourself have to restrain yourself in the act of writing?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying to be accurate to how a real investigation goes, and more often than not, I think it's a growing accumulation of evidence, which to me is a growing momentum. I'm always mindful of momentum when I'm writing. That's, to me, the key thing about it. And, I believe if you have momentum when you're writing, the reader's going to have momentum when they're reading it. And so, I'm always trying to keep, foot on the gas steady. I don't have to, burn rubber, but I do have to keep things moving.
Michael, after 33 novels, various awards, the Edgar Award and 2 Falcon Awards, numerous films and TV series, who do you write for these days?
Well, it's the same. It's always been the same. You kind of write for yourself, and I know that people are. I've always heard some writers go like, "Oh, that's crazy," but it's really true. You write to please yourself because you have a big enough ego to think that if I like it, there's going to be people out there who like it. And I've always been that way, and that really hasn't changed over time. So, I just think it's a wrong thing to lick your finger and hold it up into the wind to see what do they want now, or what do they want from me. That's not the way to go about doing it. You just got to keep your head down and write a story that you choose for yourself, and that hopefully you'll find on a day-to-day basis fulfilling. You'll make steps every day in the creation of this story, and they got to be fulfilling, because if you don't feel it, the readers are not going to feel it.
Michael Connelly, it's been a great pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining me on the Good Reading Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
The Night Fire by Michael Connelly is published by Allen & Unwin and is available at goodreadingmagazine.com.au and all good bookstores. My name's Greg Dobbs, and thanks for listening.